Welcome to a Journey on My Mind short. We are trying something new today.
No.
It's how it's set. It has to be short journey. It's a short journey, not a long journey.
Okay.
It's a short
Try
journey.
it again. Welcome to a short Journey on My Mind. We are trying something new today. I've got two of my friends with me, Dave and Sam. Say hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
And we are going to focus our energy around a couple of questions. One question. And look at a 15-minute response to this question. And today, the question is this. When you encounter a friend who is in need, maybe they've lost a loved one or something has happened to them, got a bad diagnosis, what are some of the things you should say, and what are some of the things you definitely should not say?
Good one.
And
Great question.
And as pastors, we encounter this often.
Yeah.
Because we hear this news often.
Yep.
And as therapists, you hear you
Often.
These
you
things a lot.
often
Yeah.
encounter people on their worst day.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah. So thoughts on this, guys?
Well, I'm sitting with people a lot of times who are, in some form of challenge or struggle, and so I try and choose very carefully what I say. It's easy just to respond, and I think we tend to do that out of a really good place, but sometimes in that response it's whether we mean well, but
Right.
sometimes it doesn't always.
Well, what are we
feel
trying
that
to
way.
avoid? We're trying to avoid platitudes. We're trying
Yes.
to avoid saying things that will make it worse.
Yeah.
Or appear like we don't really get it.
Yeah.
Also to just recall for the person the pain. You're trying to avoid certain things. So there's some things you just don't want to just press or lean into. And so you avoid certain statements. Like and I'm gonna put this one on the table.
Okay.
But it's like, your mom died. I'm sorry to hear your mom died. Well, God just needed another angel in heaven.
Yeah.
No.
No, I needed my mom here. Actually, is
right. Yeah.
That's
it's things like that
Totally.
that we will say that it's intended to alleviate some pain in another person's life, but it actually is throwing shade on God in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
Dave,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Well, I think people often feel this pressure to say something wise,
Right.
or to give some direction,
Right.
and usually what people need in that moment is just a really good, empathetic listener.
Yes.
Someone who's going to allow them to talk out loud and process it.
Yep.
And someone who's just a very good, wise presence.
Yep.
Right. That's the gift you can give somebody in that moment
Yeah.
is your presence. And so often people will avoid these conversations because they're like, I don't know. I hear this all the time.
Yeah.
People say, I don't know what to say.
Yeah. What do I do with this?
That's great. Then don't say anything.
Right. That don't say
Right.
anything. And get good at asking good questions and being curious and drawing people out.
Right.
And we've talked before, actually here at the church, about getting good at being genuinely curious and asking people good questions. And so you start with, if you can, open questions, which are not just a yes or no or a simple answer, but a question that's like, well, tell me about blank, right? Which actually, by the way, isn't even a question. It's interesting that some questions
Yeah.
are not questions and some questions that some statements are questions.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
how you doing is not a question.
Right.
No, it's
Right.
really not.
But tell me about what's been going on, or tell me about
yeah.
the last couple of days is a question.
Yeah.
Even though it technically isn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the first thing I would do is get really good at asking open questions, particularly tell me about this or talk about this, or would you first, get permission. I'm a big permission asker.
Yeah.
Would it be okay if I asked you about this, or would that be
Right.
good for you if I
Yeah.
asked about that?
That's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, that's real good.
That's
Yep.
important thing about that is
Right.
ask
Yeah. I
permission.
do that even in therapy. People are
Right.
coming into therapy
Yeah.
with the idea that they're going to say personal things. Even with that, if it's something very personal, I'll ask their permission.
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other part I'll say about the open question is that you don't want to throw out an open question and then quickly move on.
Right.
Because the message in that is, I didn't really care about what you just said.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So you want to pick at it a little bit.
Right.
And when that happened, let me go back to this thing.
Yep.
What was that like, or whatever? And you don't have to be a therapist. You just have to be someone that listens well,
Right.
is curious, draws that out from people.
Yeah. I know, like when I lost my mom, and that was the first really big loss for me. And the people in my life, like we were saying, meant well. Their intentions were beautiful, and they wanted me to feel comfort, and probably themselves to feel more comfort in that too. I think there's a piece of that. We want to feel comfortable in that.
Yeah.
But the one thing that really stood out to me was a friend who, a lot of my friends had been saying a lot of the, the platitude type things.
God has a plan.
God needed another angel or whatever the things are. Right. And one of my buddies came up and he just grabbed a hold of me and he started crying and he just said, "I'm so sorry."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the most healing,
Yeah.
beautiful moment for me.
And that's what you remember.
That's the one I remember.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And that brings me back to permission, though. Like when you encounter somebody and you want to give them a hug, get permission.
Yeah.
There isn't that.
And sometimes the permission's kind of built in
Sure.
to the
In
relationship.
that it was, for sure.
In the history of the
Yeah,
relationship.
But you're right. I mean, it's
But if it's someone that you don't know that well,
Right.
yeah, for sure.
Could you use a hug? Would you appreciate
Would that
a
be
hug?
good for you?
Yeah.
Rather than just hugging them.
Just jumping in,
I've been hugged by people that I did not want
You
to be
weren't
hugged
ready.
by.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, hold on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Getting a little handsy.
Easy, fella.
Easy, big boy. Sam.
But then I let go. Okay. Yeah.
But that's part of, I think, learning just the social cues. It's also part of, I think one of the passages that helps me the most in the Bible is Jesus wept with those who wept. So we cry with those who cry. We laugh with those who laugh.
Yeah.
We rejoice with those who rejoice, and we join into not just observe or try to fix something that's not fixable.
Well, and what I experienced with my friend was he stepped into it with me.
Right. He joined you in it.
He joined me in it. And I mean, I think when we ask those questions, we make those statements, like we said, that generally that comes from a good place. But boy, how powerful when we actually step into it and are with somebody in that.
In the sorrow or something.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, right? It's being present.
Yeah.
And not feeling like you have to have all these right answers or be wise or say something spiritual.
Right.
Or any of it. Just to be able to give them a chance to talk and not to make an assumption.
Right.
That's part of being a good listener is you don't someone may have experienced the loss of someone close to them and, to be honest, not feel sad for a variety of reasons. I'll give you an example. My dad passed away.
Yeah.
And by the time he died, it was a relief.
Right.
For him and for us because
Yep.
he was miserable. He had multiple strokes. He was paralyzed on one side. He couldn't. His quality of life was nothing. And in terms of human life existence.
Yeah.
And so when he died, we were like, okay. Right. And it wasn't a tearful, sad thing.
No.
Now, there have been other times when someone maybe even not as close to me has had something happen. It's been very sad. So that's part of this too, is not to impose an assumption on someone. You must be very sad, or this is a really sad time for you. But to really ask those things. So like how and to validate it. Right. If someone's like, if a parent dies and they're not sad, there's probably half a dozen reasons why that could be. And just to hear that through their eyes of why might that be, and that can be okay.
And but that's being observant and listening. And asking good questions, because you can hear it in answers. You can hear all of our dads kind of died young.
My mom was really young. She was 54 when she died. And then my dad was 69. So it was still really young.
My dad was 74. How old was your dad?
Boy, he was probably 70, 7, maybe.
Still okay. None of them
Something
made
like
it.
that.
Nobody was real old.
No,
in that,
no
in
one's
that
making
deal.
it. My dad had dementia, and we were like all relieved.
That's the same.
Like, he
Dad
was-
had
yeah.
Parkinson's, and
Yeah.
it was so hard to
Right.
watch his body give up. Like,
Yeah.
by the time he passed,
Right.
yeah, there was sadness, but it wasn't. But I think we'd grieved so much in that process
Right.
too. So it was the different.
Yeah.
just like you're saying, Dave.
Even with my mom recently passing, I was able to walk through a lot of stuff with her for the last month and a half of her life.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, I know where this is going. I know where this ends. And
Well, before we wrap it up, let me give one more in line with what we're talking about. Did I cut you off?
Well, I was just going to say, I had processed a lot of the grief, I think, prior to her dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And often that happens. It's
Yeah.
like, I've already done my grieving here.
Yep.
This is now,
Yeah.
I'm through that.
Right. Yep.
And part of this, what we're talking about, is asking those curious questions, and then I'll call it a power tool
Okay.
in a conversation like this, is called a reflection. And that's where you're saying back to the person what
Yeah.
they're telling you.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, a reflection here would be, so by the time that he died, you had actually grieved the loss of him before that happened.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So that's the message. Is like, I hear what you're saying, but this is what you're telling me.
Right.
It shows I'm with you. I hear this.
Yes.
That's very powerful if you can do that.
It is.
Absolutely.
And part of that then allows them, that explains the emotion a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if it was a sudden death, the emotion behind that is often much more raw
Right.
and much more difficult.
Yeah.
And by the way, here's what's cool about a reflection. Even if you're wrong, you're right. And what I mean by that is, I say, by the time
I could correct you.
Yes. Right. So by the time he passed away, you had already grieved, and you're like, well, I didn't grieve that much, but it was actually a process, and then you give some clarification.
Right.
And they're not thinking, you idiot.
Yeah,
You
right,
didn't
no,
hear
they're
that.
like,
They're
oh,
like, he's
yeah.
really trying
He's
to
in it
understand
with
this.
me.
He's
Yeah,
in it with
yeah,
us.
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
That's really good.
It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, we as humans find these moments awkward at times, and you don't know what to say, you know? And so if you don't know what to say, ask a question, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes just be quiet.
Yeah, and just be present.
I remember we had a time, Ellen and I got called one afternoon or evening for some friends that lived at a distance from us, and they said this bad thing has happened, and we drove and literally just kind of sat Shiva with them. We hardly said a word.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We just sat there with them at their
good.
kitchen or their dining room table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Sometimes
that's all
there's
there is.
presence.
That's all
All
there
they
is to
need
do. Well, thank you for joining us for this short journey on my mind.